Hey, welcome back to another Getting Together podcast, broadcast. You know us, Raylene Challinor, and this guy, Jeremy Brinkerhoff.
Hello.
And it looks a little different today.
It does.
Yes.
Very homey.
We're not at the porch, as you can tell.
Nope.
We are, I'm going to get the name wrong. We are at Las Fuentes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well done.
In Prescott, Arizona.
Yes.
We are going to be interviewing a very special guest today, and this one I am very excited about.
Yes?
I am.
Why is that?
Miss Joan Bigley is, I believe, 96 years old.
Fantastic.
And that just gets me excited because the longer the life, the more the story.
That's right.
And
absolutely.
I love a good story.
And she's been a part of our community for a long time. So that's going to be exciting as well.
Yes.
But before we dive into that, I do have something that I need to bring up.
Okay.
To really vindicate me.
Yeah.
And I'm part of our experience here. I have to have my phone.
Okay.
Because there's a visual involved. And I'll make sure to put that on the YouTube.
All right.
The YouTube, not just YouTube.
The
YouTube. So,
I'm intrigued.
This past weekend was Super Bowl Sunday.
Yes, it was.
And as a part of Super Bowl, they had a pretty fantastic
oh my gosh,
halftime show.
For those of us who are over the age of 45.
Yes.
It was fantastic.
Yes.
Perhaps if you're 18, not so much.
Because like you had Dr. Dre.
Oh my word. Where did they get him from?
I don't know. I'm glad he's showing some age too.
Yes,
it kind of makes you feel better.
Yeah, and looks great. I mean,
But
showing age.
So here, I wanted to just show you that.
Okay.
Now how do I do this?
Oh boy.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Here we are. This is a shot from the halftime show. What do we have here, Ray?
I don't know what that is.
What do we have there?
A snoozaphone.
A sousaphone. A sousaphone. So I'm complete. Like,
are you hip now?
I was hip then. You think the sousaphone thing is like some kind of crazy? No. We're talking the main stage with Eminem and the sousaphone, 8 Mile.
Yes.
Detroit.
Right.
Dr. Dre, straight out of Compton.
Yes.
I am part of hip hop culture.
You're the hippest
I'm the
of the
hippest.
hip hop.
So,
why weren't you up there?
You always say, man, these are my people, the hood, all this kind of stuff.
Those were my people. Oh my gosh. I loved it.
I fit. I totally fit.
See, there's a place for everyone, really.
Absolutely.
There's just a place for
there
everyone.
There you are. Sousaphone, number one. No more jokes.
No more? Really?
I'm hip.
You are. Just doing that makes you hipper.
Yeah.
Word to your mother.
Yes. So, okay.
Wow. I didn't even notice that.
Now that that's off my chest.
When I was watching it.
We can move on.
Didn't even know that was there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Because you're not cultured like me.
Right. That's why.
In that culture.
I thought it was amazing. Anyway, so I wanted to talk today a little bit about older people in our life.
Yes.
Since Miss Joan's a little older, a little wiser.
Yes.
She's got a few more years under her belt.
Yes. More mature.
Yes, more mature. Made some mistakes and hopefully has learned from them. I don't know. She's watching in the wings and making faces at me.
Nope.
I know I'm going to like
mistakes.
her.
Good.
So were there any, grandparents, anybody, neighbor, or anybody, teacher in your life that was kind of older that just you admired, that had stories that, I don't know, anyone like that?
No.
Because you were busy playing the sousaphone?
So unfortunately, my grandparents died fairly young. Oh. So I didn't actually know my dad's father. He was dead before even my sister was born. She's a couple of years older than I am. So he died very, very young. And I think in his mid to late 40s.
Oh, wow.
And then my mom's dad, he died when I was like 7.
Oh, my word.
But I still find him to be really influential.
Yeah.
Alvin Meekins was his name, and he was awesome. He was such a great grandfather.
What made him awesome?
He was one of those guys that just always had a smile on his face, made me feel like I was the only grandchild. And he just had these moments of being able to take us out. They lived on a golf course in Fresno, California.
Yeah,
and
Fresno.
so it was on this country club. And so we'd go out back and he'd always have lots of dried bread and stuff. So we'd go feed the ducks at the pond.
That's so fun.
And then we'd look for golf balls. So that was his thing. So we'd go under the bushes and we'd grab golf balls and do all kinds of stuff. And then I remember him taking me fishing. I don't really remember anything special about the fishing itself, but I really remember just kind of looking up to him. And then when he died, I remember just that experience of really feeling the sense of loss because of just how much he had invested in me and made me feel. And it was kind of a weird deal. This might seem a little calloused, but when my grandmother passed away, she passed away within a few years of him. And so we're at her funeral and they played Wind Beneath My Wings. And I'm like bawling and all these people are like, man, he really misses his grandma. And I'm like, dude, I miss my grandfather. It reminds me of him. Like that was who did support and I really felt so much of that. So even 4 or 5 years later, however long it had been, it really kind of affected me in that way. So I would say my grandfather on my mom's side.
Good. See, good story. Time. He spent time with you.
He spent time. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Didn't cost him a dime.
Nope.
Just spent time with you.
He's just a neat dude.
Yes. Love that. Love it.
How about you? Who's that person in your life?
Growing up, I don't remember really anyone other than, teachers, but they didn't seem older to me.
Right.
They were just teachers. Excuse me. But when we moved into Milwaukee, we had no family around us. We hadn't lived by family since, never till 6 years ago. And so it was kind of a lonely place. And, we were going cross culture. So nobody really looked like us. Like familiar things weren't there. And as it happens, 3 doors down from us, there was a bachelor. His name is Skip. Skippy. It's actually Francis, but he goes by Skip.
I would too.
And anyway, he was kind of just the neighborhood. I don't want to say grandpa because he's hardcore. He's like 84 and still downhill skis 14 hours a day. In
Detroit?
In Milwaukee.
Milwaukee, sorry.
Yeah. So he teaches
Where do you
skiing.
ski in Milwaukee?
There's hills. There's not mountains, but there's hills.
Okay.
And he teaches the little kids. Still 84 years old.
Wow.
Mountain bikes, hikes, all of it. Sleeps in his car when he comes back to Arizona. He sleeps in his car on the side of the road.
So where was he in Arizona?
To get back to Milwaukee.
Oh, because he would visit you.
Well, let me tell you the story.
Go.
So we befriend this man. He falls in love with our children.
Nice.
And he's never been married. Of course, family's all gone, and we just kind of adopt him, and he adopts us, and then we didn't feel so lonely anymore because Mr. Skip was there.
Nice.
And so when we moved here, it was really sad for all of us. We were like, what are we going to do with Mr. Skip? And he lives in this huge 3-story, 7-bedroom, old Milwaukee mansion, and all alone.
Wow.
And so every day I would be like, what if something happens to Mr. Skip? Who's going to know?
Right.
So I just asked him one day, Mr. Skip, would you move out here? So we got a little mobile home out in Prescott Valley and lives by my in-laws right behind Denny's.
Still?
Yeah, he moved out here.
Why do you not know Skip? Why do I not know Skip?
Because he goes out for the winter in Milwaukee to teach skiing, and he'll be back in March. He's a hoot.
What?
Yeah. And he set up funds for my kids.
Oh my goodness.
Just loves on my children. It's just amazing.
That's really neat.
Pours into them. He's so smart. He's been all around the world. He teaches them science and he has the old Lionel trains. Do you remember those? I don't know that you would, but they're collector's items now. And he brought all the trains out so that he and Lennox, through his whole house, they've set up a railroad track and trains, and he's just amazing.
That's really cool,
isn't it?
That's a neat thing to be able to go. I think that's one of the things I miss about having my grandparents in my life is that they haven't seen my kids. I know. And so with Marissa's grandma, these kids have a great grandma who still does things, and she's just active and stuff. So great grandma. I think that's really, I like that there's a multi-generational aspect. Like Skip has been able to speak into your life, but he's also invested in your kids. Yeah. Which is really cool. And same with my mom. She lives with us, or we live with her, or whatever. We live together. Yeah. And I see the beauty of multi-generational living. It's just
It really is beautiful.
That's neat.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I look forward to meeting Skip.
Yes.
Maybe he can be my granddad too.
He would.
Okay.
He'd be happy to.
That's good. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, with that, we'd love to see those kind of comments in or in the chat, in the comments down
tell us
below.
about
Just
the person in your life.
who that would be for you. Maybe it's someone that like Ray said, you just met through circumstances in life. Maybe it is a grandparent,
Just a neighbor.
and maybe it's just a teacher or someone who took that extra moment to speak into your life. So put those in the comments down below. But now here is our guest for today, Miss Joan.
And here we are with Joan. Hi, Joan.
Hi there.
We're very excited to have you on the Getting Together show. So just tell us a little bit about yourself. We hear from my friend Sherry Rossman, who works here. Yep, she's the one that got you in trouble. That you've been in Prescott a while.
Well, I came to Prescott from Nebraska in 1948 as a nurse, and I transferred out from the Lincoln VA to what we called it Fort Whipple back then.
Oh, okay.
That was it was very primitive back then, and it was quite an interesting place. Well, it was after the war, and it was still very military, and we had a guardhouse that, as we drove in, we had the decals on our cars, and they waved us in, but they would stop cars from coming in. We called it the post, and we lived in a nurse's home, which it was an old barracks, and then the doctors lived up on Doctors Road. You can still see those big old buildings up there. One of them is the museum, and there were the 6 wards and well, really 8 wards. Do you want a description of the hospital, or would you rather just Ward 1 and Ward 2 were medical wards. Ward 3 and Ward 4 were TB wards. Ward 5 and Ward 6 were surgical wards. And across the street in an old barracks building were the convalescent TB patients. When they got so that they could be out of the hospital, they'd finish their convalescence over there in Ward 7 and 8. And Whipple was classified at that time as a TB hospital. And we all had to be checked for, get our checks to see if we were able to go ahead and work on the TB wards.
Wow.
And it was still very military. On the weekends, on Saturday morning, the manager and the chief of directors would come through the wards on inspection, very much like a military inspection. On Fridays, we would all be very, very busy getting things straightened up, and the patients' wards, we had to see that the beds were made properly and the blankets were folded properly at the foot of the bed. And it was all very military. And so they would come through and they would have inspection, and the patients that were able would stand by their bedside. The patients that were not able, of course, would be in their beds. And so then they would leave then on Saturday, the director and so forth. This would happen in the morning. And then in the afternoon, we had fun.
We had fun.
We would take those big old 50cc syringes and fill them with water, and we would have water fights up and down.
Joan!
And the patients would love us.
That's awesome.
I have to know, what uniform did you wear? Did you have the cute little white hat?
Yes, I had a quite little white cap that had a little peak.
Yeah.
So each each nursing school had a different outfit, different hat.
Oh.
So the school that I went to in Omaha, Nebraska was Emmanuel Hospital, and we had a little peaked cap.
Cute.
But we didn't have any stripes on it or anything like that.
Oh. What made you want to be a nurse? Why nursing?
My dear Aunt Lola, who was a nurse at the Veterans Hospital, and I adored her when I was a little girl, and I wanted to be like my Aunt Lola. In fact, my first name is Lola.
Okay.
I'm Lola Joan,
Oh,
but the family called me Joan as to differentiate
Sure.
between Aunt Lola. And then when I became in high school and suddenly was very interested in flying. I'll tell you stories about that.
Oh, yes, please.
Back then, to be a hostess on the airline, you had to be an RN. So I thought, okay.
I didn't know that.
Yes, oh yes, indeed. And so in order to be able to fly, I wanted to be an RN so that I could fly all over the world.
Wow.
on the airlines.
Yeah.
Which, of course, then the war interceded and things all changed.
Right.
But as far as things, let's see, what else do I have here about the VA?
She's got a little list.
A little list.
Because the VA here is historical, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah,
it's, yeah.
it used to be. One of the things that maybe some of the old timers here will remember, there was a bus that went from the VA to into Prescott, and it was called the Whipple Stage. I don't know if anybody remembers a rickety old bus, and it went from Whipple to Prescott and back again.
Okay.
And one time there was a nurse that transferred from New York out to the VA here in Prescott.
Oh, wow.
And she wrote a letter back and said that she took the train from New York to Ash Fork. Then she got off the train and took a bus from Ash Fork to Prescott. Then she got off the bus and took a stage to the Veterans Hospital.
Oh my goodness.
All her friends back in New York, of course, pictured as a
Stagecoach.
as a stagecoach.
Nice. Stage. That's awesome.
When I worked there, of course, it was after the war, but I do remember that as I recall, we had one little old patient from the First World War. Well, the rest of them, of course, all were gone, but this little old man, a little hunkered old, sweet little old guy, and we all called him Pop Turner.
Oh.
And he was our remaining World War I veteran.
Wow.
And I remember one time at Christmas time, the different little choral groups would come in, and he loved to hear the girls sing, the little girls sing their Christmas carols, and they would walk down the hall singing their Christmas carols, and little Pop Turner, all hunkered over, would follow those little girls and just loved to hear them.
Oh, that's sweet.
Awesome.
And I take a writing class, and one of my essays I did, I called it Aloft. And it started out, my first interest in flying, when I was about, you want to hear this history?
Oh, sure, yes.
Oh, wow.
This is what makes us us, right? These are our
Yes.
stories. These are the things that
Okay.
differentiate us from.
Okay, this is what I wrote in my essay.
Donkeys.
When I was about 5 years old, I had a little boy cousin. He was 2 years older than I was. His name was Kenneth, but his daddy was a pilot. And we were at Grandma and Grandpa's house, and Kenny was bossing me around, and so he had us come and sit on Grandma's cedar chest, and he sat in front of me, and I sat behind him. Then he got Grandma's yardstick, and he put the yardstick in front of him, and we were ready to take off.
Oh.
And so that, of course, became our joystick.
Yes.
And so we revved up that joystick, and he all of a sudden he reared back with that joystick, and we took off into the atmosphere with all the accompanying noise. And poor Grandma.
Poor Grandma. Oh.
To follow, I think, the next one that I did, I lived in a little tiny town in Fullerton, Nebraska, and there was a little less than 2,000 population. But you may remember in the history that they had barnstormers that would come in and take people for rides.
Yeah.
And by that time, I think I was either 10 or 12. And a barnstormer came into Fullerton and was he landed out at the fairgrounds, and for $10 he would take people flying over Fullerton.
$10? That was a lot.
It was a lot of money at that time.
And how long was the ride? Do you remember?
Well, I had a paper route, and I saved my money. And when I saw that barnstormer was coming, I got on my bicycle and I rode out to the fairgrounds with my $10 clasped in my hand, and I went up on that barnstormer. And
Your parents let you go?
I don't remember whether there was anything signed or questions or anything else.
And
I don't think I told my parents.
I was going to say, did your parents know?
I believe I just pedaled down there without letting them know much about it.
Aren't those barnstormers the ones that are open? There's no enclosed, right? Were they open?
Like an open cockpit?
Open
Was it a biplane?
Oh, yeah. Then
Oh, my word.
That's awesome.
No. My 11-year-old is not going in one of those. No.
Oh, no.
Wow, Joan.
Well, then my next flight was when I did an affiliation from Omaha, Nebraska to Kansas City, Missouri, and a group of us did this affiliation, and we decided that was quite the thing to do. Instead of driving down to Kansas City, that we would go on the plane. And at that time, that was very unusual. But we got all dressed up
to the
with
nines
heels
back then.
and hose and
with
hats
your Pan Am bag.
and matching handbag.
Oh, yes.
And nurses being very I can't think of the word, but
reckless.
We were quite brave that we flew from Omaha, Nebraska to Kansas City, Missouri.
Wow.
And we even had a little write-up in the paper about
I bet.
about
Oh, that's so
nurses.
great. Oh, man.
That's awesome.
I love that.
One of my most memorable flights was actually I was working as a mechanic out in Tulare, California, and the boss that I was working for, he found a great deal on an old biplane, an old Stearman, open cockpit, and so for a while it was in disrepair. So I'm just sitting there every day like, oh my goodness, when is he gonna get this thing back together? So he finally got it all fixed, got everything figured out, and said one day after work, he's like, okay, we're giving rides.
Let's do it.
So the guy who was actually most proficient was an ag pilot. And so he takes us up, but we're only like 6 feet off the ground for most of it, So we're zooming over, and then he'd just pull it up, and he'd put it over on its wing, and he'd come back down, and it was thrilling. And honestly, like if one of my if I ever won the lottery things, there's plenty of airplanes that go fast and whatever, but I would definitely 100% own an old Stearman, an old biplane, open cockpit, and there's just nothing like it. There's absolutely nothing like it.
Marissa would be okay with this?
Okay, so that's if I won the lottery. So already we're kind of in the dream state.
We're dreaming.
Right?
And so we're dreaming that my wife would let me have one of these.
There's no reality to what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
It's just that dream.
Kids are grown, out of the house.
Yes. Yeah. And I think she'd be open to me having one. I don't think she'd go up in it.
Okay.
Open cockpit, definitely not.
That's fun.
It's a blast.
Yeah.
I
loved it.
Wow.
Loved it.
You're a little
so
thrill
good.
seeker.
Well, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. I love that. So I've been noticing your necklace too, Joan. There's for those of you who are just listening, and probably if you can't see it on camera, there's a lot of like little gold nuggets. And then like the pendant is a gold nugget as well. Do you kind of have an interest in gold panning?
Here's the story.
Yeah, give us the story. We like a good story.
My husband Frank gave me for Valentine's Day. That's why I'm wearing it today. Gave me the gold nuggets on a necklace, but the little lavalier thing there, that's the little nugget here. You see, that I panned that gold.
Whoa.
It wasn't a nugget at that time.
Yeah.
But back then, there was a pastry chef at Whipple that had a gold claim, and so another nurse and I were quite interested in how he would pan the gold.
Yeah.
So he took us out gold panning, and we panned quite a lot of gold dust. The two of us did, and so we didn't know how to divide that. And so we took it in, and I can't remember the name of the jeweler that he was in Prescott, and we took the gold in and had him divide it and make a nugget.
Wow.
And so
That's
she has
awesome.
a
So she
gold
has a
nugget,
matching one.
and I have a gold nugget.
Oh, that's
and
precious.
When Frank gave me the gold necklace, we had the nugget hung on there.
That's
Very
really
pretty.
cool.
Yeah.
Very unique.
So then, in the area, I've taken my kids kind of out by Lynx Lake. There's still some little places where you can pan and things like that. We haven't found anything because I have no patience. After about 10 minutes, I'm like, oh, no gold. Let's go, kids. But where was the area that you guys found most of your?
Lynx. That was before the dam was built out there. We used to be able to do that. And then more recently, we had a house guest from Kentucky, and my son Joe also has a claim, and so Joe took her out and showed her how to pan gold, and she went home and told everybody that she'd been to Arizona panhandling.
Oh, it's slightly different.
Little different. That's funny.
That's awesome.
Joan, I want to know how you met Frank.
Oh boy, that's a long story.
Jeremy can edit.
That's right. That's right.
I was in Kansas City at an affiliation, and at that time it was the polio epidemic, and we were working on the polio ward. Another couple of others. We had a little polio patient whose mother was a singer in a nightclub in Kansas City.
Wow.
A lovely, lovely lady and a darling little patient. And so one time they gave us tickets to go to a musical performance, those nurses that were working in the polio ward. So we went out to dinner. These other nurses and I went out to dinner, and to go to this free performance that we had tickets for. And while we were eating, three pilots came in and took the booth next to us, and somehow, conversation sort of ensued.
Yes.
And
Somehow.
suddenly they had convinced us it would be lots more fun to go dancing with them than it would go to this free performance. So that's what we did. And then the evening ended. We had good time dancing, and that was that. But we did exchange names and addresses, and I thought that was going to be all. And then, much to my surprise, in the next few days, I had a letter from Frank, and we began to correspond. And this went on, and then in the meantime, I moved out to the VA here in Prescott, and he even visited me here. And we were very, very serious, but he was in military intelligence as an officer. And all of a sudden, no more letters, no more phone calls, no more nothing.
Oh.
And this went on for quite some time with me, checking the mailbox daily and
Oh, yes.
becoming more and more convinced that I had been royally jilted. So I eventually started to date again, and I met Jay Robertson, who was a reporter for the Prescott Courier.
Oh, wow, back then.
And we married. And cut it short, after many years, 40 years I think was to be, I've been married and had my family and divorced, and out of the blue I went back to work at Whipple after I'd been gone for many years, and walked on the ward, and the secretary said, "Joan, you have a letter." Handed it to me, and they said I took about 4 shades of white.
Wow.
Had to go sit down, and it was a letter from Frank. And
Oh, my word.
That's Valentine's Day. That's Valentine's Day right there.
You're not supposed to make me cry, Joan.
Anyway, the reason I had not heard from him, he was sent underground and had not been able to do any corresponding, and his underground stories, well, we can't talk about that.
Right.
But
It's very hush-hush.
we got back together again and got
my
married.
word.
We were married for 20 years before he died.
Oh my goodness. That is
So that was our
incredible.
story.
Oh, that was our story.
That's it. You know.
That's it.
Holy cow.
Wow.
How did he find you?
Yeah.
He still knew where my mother and father lived, and he
Okay.
called them when he finally emerged from underground.
Yeah, well, I mean,
And
he was
at that
military
time-
intelligence, so I guess that was kind of a dumb question on my part.
Yeah.
How did he find you?
They know where you are.
He always knew.
At that time, I had married,
Yeah.
and so when he was able to find my who I was and where I was from my mother, he called me out of the blue,
Wow.
and I couldn't do anything. I was married.
Oh, yeah.
So
Wow.
that was what that was. Yeah.
That's
That's
really
amazing.
Neat. That is a really neat story.
Wow.
And-
Joan.
Let's see.
There you go. Yeah.
Get back to the flight. I think that
I don't know.
I'm all teared up.
Yeah, to get back
How
to
are
the
you going
point.
to top that, Joan? Top that story.
well, since it's Valentine's Day, I thought I could maybe tell that.
Oh yeah,
Would-
that's
would-
worthy.
Would that be out of place to tell that? Sorry,
all.
people, if that.
No.
No apology needed there. Mm-mm. It doesn't matter what day it is. That's just a great tale of love. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Pursuit,
Yeah.
man.
Really. Okay, what else do you have on your list? You got
Well, I was going to
Something
tell
else?
you, still kind of talking about my aloft things that I have done. I
You
think.
said you're taking a writing class? Is that now?
Well, it's a class that we do essays and read aloud to each other and critique
really cool.
it.
That's so great.
And I think I'm up to about 60 or 70 now.
Wow.
And so one of the ones that I do think that was probably the most interesting flight, quote unquote, was when they were building doing core samples for the dam, for Grand Canyon Dam. I was acquainted with some of the geological survey boys that were doing their core sampling, went up to Tuba City, and they had built a cable car from the rim of the canyon down to the inner gorge,
Nope.
and then from the inner gorge across the river to the other bank to take their core samples. And so my husband, and this was Jay, were allowed to. They have a little kind of a cage that hung from the cable, And so you stepped off the rim of the canyon into this little cage, which was about the size of an elevator cage. It just had the windows around and open. And so you step into the cage, and the car started down the cable, and you were swinging over the Grand Canyon in this little cage that's about the size of an elevator cage.
Nope.
And poor Jay got seasick, and he sat down and hit his head. But I was just thrilled. Here I was hanging over the Grand Canyon on this cable, and as your eyes followed the cable down to the inner gorge, optical illusion, it pinched out, and it looked like it ended.
Oh my goodness.
So then you get down in this was a plateau down in the inner gorge, and they had the cook shacks down there, and then you got off this one cage, and the cable swung over the river, and at that time it was at flood stage, and you looked down at the mighty Colorado at flood stage, and you were hanging in this little cage.
Oh my words.
That is amazing.
But I think that was my most interesting flight.
What?
Even more than the homemade open cockpit one.
Oh my goodness. Was there any other story that just really stuck out to you that you wanted to share with our listeners today,
Well,
Joan?
I had some rememberies, as my little boy used to say, about Prescott. Maybe you've talked about these things before.
Probably
but,
not.
Probably not.
We talked about the Whipple stage.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
I don't know when it went out of business, but I remember when they put the first traffic light down at Gurley and Montezuma.
Oh my goodness.
Really?
And we said, what are they trying to do? Make a city of this dumb little cowboy town?
Oh. Now we have a few more than one.
Yeah, now we have a few more.
And I curse them. I curse them every day.
I know.
And I wondered if anybody remembered, and this must have been about 1950, more or less, that Barry Goldwater came up and gave a talk at the St. Michael's, and
Oh, okay. So St. Michael is still around.
yeah, has this been talked about?
No,
Anybody know?
Nope.
Well, he was. I can't remember if it was sponsored by the Republican women or just what, but it was when Barry Goldwater was very prominent.
Yeah.
And we were all seated in the audience, and Barry was up at that time. They had a little stage built, and he was up on the stage and talking on the mic, and one of his aides came up and whispered in his ear, and everything stopped, and Barry turned to the audience and he said, something has happened, and I'm going to ask that you leave immediately as quickly as you can.
Oh.
And we all got up and left, and evidently it was a bomb scare that had been phoned in. And I cannot, there's one person in town that I think I wrote a letter to the editor and asked if anybody remembered this, and nobody did except this one gentleman, and we talked briefly about it, but I never could find out. There was never anything in the paper, never anybody that seemed to know anything about it, but I vividly remember that.
Wow.
That would definitely make an impression.
I would remember that too. Yes.
And remind me, Barry Goldwater, what era? Are we 70s, early 70s?
I think she said 50s.
You said 50s?
50s?
It was in the 50s.
In the 50s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm bad about my history.
Yeah, because he ran for president in the 60s, 64, I think it was,
Okay.
something like that. And let's see if I have any other rememberies here about
Any more
Prescott.
rememberies?
Traffic light. Remember we used to do square dancing at the old
Hey.
armory.
Square
Oh,
dancing.
yeah.
My grandmother and grandpa, big square dancers. Yes, they loved that.
And we had then they did some square dancing down the square, and then I think the old timers here all remember Enid, the little old lady. She would go from door to door. Do you remember hearing about Enid?
No. Enid. Great name.
She was a little old lady and not quite alert, but she would go to in and out of every business establishment, and I can't remember exactly what she said, but it started out with, "How are you, Enid? Fit as a fiddle and ready for love, and all those old boys that want to love me," or something like that. And
we could have been friends.
Your future. I was going to say
absolutely.
Your future.
But
or maybe your present. I don't know.
Somewhere I have they wrote her up in the in the paper, but Enid would go every single day around the square, in and out every business establishment, and you were supposed to say, "Hi, Enid, how are you?"
And she would give her little limerick.
She would give her little limerick.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
That's so cute.
Well, you have seen quite a few changes in Prescott.
You noticed?
Yeah. How are you feeling about that?
Sad.
Are you?
Of course, since I've been incarcerated here at the institution, and I had to give up my car, and I don't get around much anymore.
Yeah.
There's a song about that.
There's a good song about that.
So when I do get out and see all the changes, and I don't even recognize the town anymore.
Really?
It changes almost weekly, it seems.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one last question from me here. Your given name is Lola.
Mm-hmm.
And is it true, whatever Lola wants, Lola gets?
Absolutely.
Okay, so
it's carved in stone.
Well, let's bust you out of this joint.
Right.
You don't need to be here.
Lola wants out.
You want out? We'll get you out.
My friend Sherry tells me you still play the clarinet. Mm-hmm. Do you play it well?
No, you see my fingers. Look at those fingers. I play it just for my own pleasure.
Yeah, because Jeremy
awesome.
here plays the sousaphone.
Yes, thank you for pronouncing that finally correctly.
Well,
So
you've got
I
street
appreciate
cred
that.
now.
That's
so.
right. That's right. I do.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe we could do a duet.
I would
You
love.
could.
Oh,
Wouldn't that be fun?
It would.
Yeah.
That would
It
be fun.
Be a little like would we do a polka?
Oh,
Would we
yeah.
do some
See, what do
big
you
band
do?
stuff?
What's your genre? What do you like to play?
Well, at this point in life, I play anything that is one octave and the key of C.
Amen. That's why I got into the tuba. I'm like, you know what?
yeah.
This is perfect. Whole notes, one octave, same key.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And I sit and I tootle on my little clarinet.
Yeah.
And of course I play by ear. I don't use any music or
Wow.
anything.
Good for
we
you.
could have a good time with that.
That would be fun.
I think so. Yeah.
We got Ethan on the drums.
Little
we got
drums.
Ella on the bass.
Yes.
And we got
Get
Joan
a
on the
little
clarinet.
All right.
Yeah, and Daniel started on the saxophone. So I mean,
Okay, I'll do a little backup vocal for you.
nice.
Combo
nice.
going here.
I
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah.
Sherry's sitting over there
Yes,
looking like.
she is.
Uh-huh.
Okay, should we ask our question? Remember at the beginning I said we're going to ask you just one final question about our podcast is called Getting Together. So we ask our guests to share with us who one person they would love to get together with in the past or present. Who's someone you would love to get together with if you could?
For a hug.
For a hug, yes, is what she said.
I think my husband Frank, if he were able to really tell the world what went on when he was underground and all. He was 32 and a half years in the military.
Wow.
And the stories that he could tell were mind-boggling.
Oh, I'm sure.
I think I would love to have him be able to sit down and tell the world what went on during those years.
Share his sacrifice, because Joan, he made a big sacrifice
Yes, he did.
Yes.
for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did he ever marry?
Yes.
between? Okay.
When he came back and I was married, he married and had a son and a daughter.
Oh.
And his son and I are still very close.
Oh.
The son lives in Alabama, and
Okay.
we're in touch all the time.
Oh, that's so great.
That's really good.
The daughter died, but
Yeah.
the son and I are still close.
Oh, that's
Excellent.
sweet.
Yeah.
I think that would be great. I would have loved to have heard his stories too.
Oh yeah,
But
absolutely.
he would tell me a little bit, and then I'd say, "What else?" And he'd say, "I don't remember." I'd say, "Oh, you do too." Then.
Kick him in the shin. That's good.
Are we through?
We're done.
I think we're done.
Yes.
But thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of Getting Together. It's
Wow.
been just a really cool lesson and such a joy to get together with Joan today.
Yes.
And we'd love to hear your stories. So we're always looking for those things of community, those stories of kind of what it has been, what it's going to be, what you think of our community. We have a lot invested here. It's a great place to live and
Yes.
to live your entire life.
Right.
So thank you so much for joining us. Please like, subscribe, and share, and we will see you on the next episode of Getting Together.
Thank you for listening.
Bye. Oh,